Roze of the Recapture, episode 8, took all of the momentum from episode 7 and flushed it down the toilet. The problems with this episode are so vast that it would take over an hour to explain it all, which I already did in my reaction to the episode. So if you don't want to hear the ramblings from a madman, then here's the Cliff Notes version of why not only is this episode bad, but arguably the worst episode in the series. Starting with the ending, I like the Master versus Apprentice battle between Kristoff and Ash. And Sokka's apology to Ash is a great example of her growth in the series. Despite these good aspects, I don't like how Ash doesn't recognize that Sokka has been Raspberry this whole time, or that Sokka apologized for not concerning his feelings for Nicole when using Geass on him, even though she just learned about Nicole yesterday, and as soon as she did decide to no longer be Roze. This didn't happen before she used Geass on him. They should have altered the order of events here to make this make sense. Then there's the Hadaka versus Catherine, aka Ass versus Tits. The fight is boring since Hadaka isn't a good pilot, and everything that happened in episodes 4 to 6 meant nothing. Catherine's cocky, bratty, horny, slutty attitude doesn't help either. There is no setup for this fight because this is the first time the characters have met on screen. They could have established this rivalry early on and then have this be the rematch where Hadaka finally beats her, but we are at episode 8 of 12, so that's not going to happen. I'd be surprised if they even have a rematch. By the way, if you are enjoying the video and finding value in this content, please consider liking the video and subscribing. On this channel, I'm covering Roze of the Recapture, and after Roze, I'm thinking of trying some coverage on other awesome anime. Check out my polls on my community tab if you want a sneak peek. But to do this, I'm going to need your support to make that happen. Now let's get back to why episode 8 is pure garbage. At this point, there's been almost no characterization or development with the whole cast aside from Sakura, Sakuya, Ash, and Nara. I was right that a big cast with a limited episode count would cause this to happen. Limited episodes means no time to show growth or have subplots with everyone. As a result, it's hard to care about anyone or anything in this series. So far, this problem affects this episode the most. Since the series didn't bother developing these characters, you don't feel the necessary tension here. The Nightmare Frame battles are awesome, but if there's no meaning behind them, then it's pointless. Anyone could die here, but it's hard to care, especially since many of these characters are just watered down versions from the original anime. Expect last minute characterization to tie everything together with duct tape that won't actually fix any of the core problems here. Norlon is the biggest casualty of this. He's the most boring, stereotypical villain in this IP. It's bad writing to make us wait until the last 3 episodes for any kind of payoff. A great example of why mystery box writing is a terrible idea. Moving on, the entire battle between Neo Britannia and the 7 Shining Stars was dumb. The Black Knight should have sent reinforcements a while ago so they could fight back. If that wasn't possible, then the 7 Shining Stars should have attempted to steal some Camdens like they did in episode 2. The episode created a false sense of tension where if they hold out long enough, reinforcements will arrive. But there aren't any because this isn't Narita, you morons. The show can't stay consistent concerning if the Akatsuki's are stronger or weaker than the Camdens. Their capabilities are consistently changed to bend towards the plot's needs. Then there's Kuroto, who doesn't fight alongside his men, even though apparently he's a top tier pilot, unless Oda's a liar. I get that he's in command, but that didn't stop Todo, Shinkai, Cornelia, or Lelouch from doing this. If you're gonna copy Todo, then at least don't half-ass it. And keep in mind, if everyone's gonna die anyways, you might as well go out now to fight with your forces instead of dying with everyone at the base. Then we gotta talk about the Eastern Dawn Brigade's kamikaze attack involving bombs. It is so stupid that none of the Neo-Britannian forces, including Arnold, who commanded them to not use any tactics to prevent these attacks from working. Instead, most of the forces gather in these large groups concentrated in one area. The whole thing felt overly contrived and comically stupid. In Akito the Exile, the Sutherlands couldn't get away. That's why that works and this doesn't. Why didn't they just throw the bombs or use Lucia's tactics to collapse the floor from stage 2? They chose shock value over intelligent writing. Also, these bombs are pretty powerful. Then why did they use them to take out the towers controlling the Satumpe Wall or other important buildings for Neo Britannia. They were effective here and against the Damocles, so at the very least you would damage the towers, which is sufficient. You have a nightmare frame with a float unit, so this shouldn't be too hard to pull off. Destroying the towers would allow Saku to kill everyone. The show again created a way to end this conflict without realizing it. First it was the submarine, and now this.
Seriously? Fuck off, show.
Next, there's Catherine, who I can't stand. If she wasn't a cringy, bratty, slutty, horny, cocky, stupid, nightmare frame dancing fan service age anime character, then maybe I would like her. A little development and backstory could have gone a long way here. For those that like that character, I have one question for you. If she looked like this, would you tolerate her behavior? No, because characters like Nina never get a pass, and people like Catherine always do. Let's be honest with ourselves and stop acting like Catherine actually has a good character, and just admit the only reason why you like her is because she's hot.
Catherine, I like you, I really do. However, I hate women who have no depth to them.
Moving on to the next ruined Ironberg member, Stanley. His betrayal came out of nowhere. If he had an issue with Kristoff's Geass cult, then maybe spend some time showing this. A shame, because Stanley had a lot of potential, which is the same as Kristoff. He joins Nara as another character who starts off interesting, but then turns out to be a moron so the plot can plot. Instead of asking Sakya to help out in his experiments, he should have asked her where she got the Geass power from. The man referenced Bartley's research as his means to learning about Geass and making a Chancellor, but missed the Code R research. Give me a break. It's never explained, by the way, how Kristoff or Norlon even considered looking into destroyed Geass research, where they learned about Geass to begin with, and how they get Bartley's destroyed research. It was destroyed. You can't just say stuff and not explain how we got there. And I'm still not convinced that Bartley's research would have all this information to begin with, since the series never went that deep into the subject. The writers are using the vague nature of this part of the plot to do whatever they want with it.
Fuck off, show.
Before getting to the big one, here's the rest of my complaints in rapid fire succession. Arnold seems like a bad Jeremiah ripoff, including his cyborg body and having a Geass Chancellor. They never explain how Arnold survived that explosion. Ash doesn't use Megisa Zeta during his battle against Arnold. Ash seems like a one-note pilot. Ash just believes in Geass once after Arnold tells him about it. Time passes really fast in this episode, making everything seem even more rushed. Arnold's nightmare frame shouldn't be working if the Satumpe Wall's a thing. Catherine's flirting with Arnold. Her cringe nightmare frame dancing. Despite being there to represent the Black Knights, Sakai is useless. Norlon wants Arnold and Catherine to wipe out the terrorists, but Kristoff could have done that in episode 5 with the Flayas. Going even further, they knew where the terrorist group were hiding in episode 3 and could have used the Flayas then, but instead they wasted it. So basically, they made the Damocles pointless again. Continuing on, the whiplash caused by the frequent switching between scenes was annoying, almost like they assume everyone watching this has the attention span of a goldfish. The cliffhanger is dumb because there's no way Ash is going to kill Sakya. It's just another bait and switch like Sakura and Walter, only worse. And now the big one, the fan service. The common counter argument to this is that, well, the original anime had fan service, so what's the problem? The problem is the context, frequency, and severity. All you have to do is analyze the fan service scenes in this episode and the series as a whole, and you'll note that the frequency is excessive, the context is nonsensical, and the severity is way too far. Now let's talk about this episode. Sakya doesn't have to be in a harness. She's already in a straitjacket locked in a chamber. They also have those devices that can kill the prisoners, so the harness only exists for fan service. Then there's the angles they give. So many butt and breast shots of Sakya, to the point where it takes away all the seriousness from the episode. Kristoff is telling Ash something important. Oh wait, here's a fun angle of Sakya to look at. Norlon is talking to Sakya, but all we can see is her butt crack. Ash and Sakya are having a heart-to-heart discussion, and she's still in a compromising position, and this keeps happening. In theory, this could work if we barely saw her in compromising angles, but it's too frequent to be taken seriously. And worse than that, unlike the depravity of the original anime, this is downright fetishy, rapey fan service that you'd only see in adult-only content. They went way too far with this crap. The original anime never went to this level. It pisses me off that people can't see the obvious difference between a harmless nude scene that somewhat contextually makes sense versus excessive continual action breast shots that are rapey and depraved. Now, Sokka isn't the only victim here. They love to animate Catherine's bouncing breasts in almost every scene. This episode and episode 3 are probably the worst examples of this so far. Then there's angles of Hadaka in her nightmare frame. Somehow these angles are either equal to or worse than Colin. Episode 7 had better examples of this, but episode 8 still shows us the same crap. Combine that with Yoko wearing her side hustle outfit, and this episode just has too much fan service to the point where it ruins the most important moments that you're supposed to care about. This isn't some ecchi or something like Cross Ange, where you aren't supposed to take it that seriously, but in this episode it had torture, kamikaze, soldiers dying in battle, trauma, murder, and other dark topics, yet the fan service takes you out of these things. The original anime did a better job at balancing this, and I will be discussing that in the future, because despite what many of you might think, I'm not against fan service in general as long as it's good. You might be wondering if other episodes have similar problems. Why is this the worst one? For starters, it puts a roadblock stopping all the momentum from the last episode. Between episodes 1, 2, and 5, this one does the most damage to the story with the bombs. It also has too much fan service even for this series. The Nightmare Frame battles were probably the least interesting, not because the animation was bad, but because the setup for them wasn't there. Kristoff and Ash was the only exception, and even then. And this is a shame because the Nightmare Frames are well animated, arguably the best thing about this series, but because everything else is so bad, you just don't care about it. This episode also has the most lore-breaking stuff in the entire IP. It gave us more time with the bad characters instead of the good ones. The character development still isn't there, which applies to characters like Stanley, Walter, and basically everyone else. There are even more attempts at failing to copy the original anime, including Akito, which shows you just how desperate these writers are, considering they know that no one liked Akito, which still bothers me to this day. And even the basic storytelling in this episode was horrible. The whole thing was rushed and confusing. Simply put, this episode is a combination of all the problems from the others in one nice complete package. This episode shows the damage of when your story is not well thought out, where everything has to be rushed or explained off screen, forcing the fans to fill in the blanks for the writers when that isn't their job. In terms of the plot, this episode along with episode 7 are the most crucial to the story, which is why I'm harsher with the bad writing here. If you were ever wondering why Roze the Recapture is such a mediocre series and at times insultingly bad, here you go, Exhibit A, Episode 8, Ginto.